David Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Melvins, and I've had some requests to feature some of Melvins' music. Definitely a legendary and influential band. They formed in Washington State in 1983, and they've been extremely prolific in their career. They just released their 27th studio album this year with Tarantula Heart. So 27 studio albums, 7 live albums, 8 compilations. And I've heard their music, labeled or described as sludge metal, alternative metal, grunge metal, experimental rock. No matter what label you want to put on Melvins, they definitely have some really cool riffs, cool songs, and it's a very different and original sounding band. I'm definitely a fan. And in the guitar department, Melvins Music, also the front man of the band, Buzz Osborne. He's been on the scene since '83 and definitely kind of reshaped and influenced a lot of, hard rock and metal and eventually alternative and grunge guitarists too. And his style is really interesting. Weird erratic effects and fuzzy tones and buzzy tones. Lots of different tunings and stuff. Standard tuning, drop D, down a whole step and then drop D, like drop C. Definitely, he's all over the place. And I like his style. Although he's not a virtuoso like Yngwie or something, but he always churns out like really interesting guitar parts and sounds and effects and stuff. Really cool guitarist. Now, if you're a Nirvana fan, you might be impressed with the fact that Melvins hired Kurt Cobain to produce Houdini, their album from 1993. And if you're not a Nirvana fan, you might be impressed to know that they fired Kurt Cobain from those sessions. So he produced like a couple songs, but then they kicked him out. And then if you're a Tool fan, you might be impressed with the fact that Buzz Osborne and Adam Jones from Tool have been buddies and friends for a long time. And also Buzz's guitar playing has directly influenced Adam Jones. You can hear it. The music in this episode came from 4 Melvins albums, and like I mentioned during the intro, they've released 27 studio albums, so there's a mountain of Melvins to dig through. And I really just grabbed, interesting chord riffs and chord mutations. Definitely Buzz is constantly twisting and turning his chords around, which I'm a huge fan of that. And that's what I grabbed or gravitated toward, where it's like, yeah, let's get those twisted chords in there. So anyway, if you're a Melvins fan, buckle up, this episode's for you. With the opening, that's Sweet Willy Rollbar from the album Stoner Witch, and definitely Stoner Witch is one of my favorite Melvins albums. That's a great one. Houdini's great too, but Stoner Witch is awesome. And we're just in regular drop D tuning for this, and it's something like this. Condensed or shortened version right there, but we're in drop D, and it actually starts with this kind of feedback delay thing that sounds something like this. There's some other weirdness going on in there too, and then you hit this riff. So that's super bouncy, heavy drop D, one finger, power chords. So he's bouncing off that F. And then you hear this kind of chord stab in there because you're doing the low, that D power chord open to that F, and then you're grabbing that. Right? So it's like a C sharp and an F sharp. So that's really interesting because you're basically playing the flat 7 and the minor third of D, right? And then right there, you're suddenly playing the major 7th and the major 3rd of D, if you relate that to D. Right? So really tense, progression. Right? Just kind of bounce around and grab that A flat up there because we're in drop D. That next riff's definitely a drop D power chord workout. This part. like a melodic thing happening with those chords. So it's slowly, it's like that. And it definitely has a groove to it, even though it's just moshing along. Right there it goes to a D flat. I guess you could also think that was a C sharp. And it keeps going in there too, but that's a really cool song, and I dig that super heavy, you know, drop D riffage. Next up's the opening to the song Teet from the album Houdini, and this definitely reveals Melvin's like kind of favorite tonality, this really dark and ominous flat 5 stuff, like this. That one ring for a little while, but there you can actually see we're just playing B, you know, a B power chord and a B flat 5 power chord. So kind of mosh that B, and then answer that with that B flat 5 right there. So we're just lowering F sharp to F, and it creates that weird twisted sound, right? Really short and sweet, but that's totally Melvin's territory right there. Next up's the song Lizzy. This is also from the album Houdini, and this is revealing some of those twisted chords I was talking about during the intro, like this. Really simple and really short and sweet here, but it's an A5 to an A6, right? And then right there it's a C flat 5. See that movement a lot in this episode. Next up's the song Queen from the album Stoner Witch. This is definitely one of my favorite Melvin's tunes, and it borrows the riff from Lizzy. It's in a different key, and it's kind of a reworked version of Lizzy, but like this. Something like that. So now it's an E power chord there, and we're doing a lot of scratching in there. And then basically he's going from that E power chord, a couple scratches, a single C sharp, and then he turns that into a G flat 5 right there, like this. So it's interesting to hear like chords mixed with single notes, mixed with those scratches, and then there's that flat 5 chord again right there. You can definitely hear some vibrato on that too. Next up's the song Creepy Smell. This came from the album Ozma, and we're in standard tuning, and there's a really wicked chord happening right here. So check that out. So that's going to be a G sharp sus4 flat 5. Talk about a weirdo chord. You know, the sus4 and a flat 5. So there's a minor second right there. Definitely will keep your neighbors up at, late at night if you play that loud. And then you're really just playing with G sharp flat 5 right there. And then back to the G sharp sus4 flat 5. twisted riff. Next up's the song Green Honey. This is also from the album Ozma, and now we're in drop D tuning, and it's something like this. Something like that. So it starts with this, super heavy. We're in drop D, keep in mind. So there's an E flat to that D, right? It's like Jaws, but backwards. Right? And then you're going to a D7 right there. And it's really interesting. Buzz does this a lot, where he'll play, like part of a major chord and then answer that with a minor, intervallic riff or something, where he's constantly, blurring between major and minor. But it creates tension because there's, part of a D7. And then you hear this E to F slide. So he's kind of answering like this happy, D7 sound with that darker, F, which technically would, imply minor and D, right? So it's interesting to hear him kind of twist his chords. Then you're just basically, kind of thrashing around up here. So really simple riff, but I love the way Buzz twists and turns and gets those really nasty, chords and twisted chords and progressions, in the songs. Cool stuff. All right, last but not least is the song City Dump. This came from the album Tres Cabrones, and we're actually tuned down a whole step and then drop D, so drop C, technically. And talk about sludge metal. Check this out. Something like that. So basically, he's really just kind of playing these partial chords in the beginning, really obnoxious, think if we were in standard tuning, think like, partial C and partial D just back and forth. But that's not where we are in this tuning. That would be more like, what, a B flat and a C, tuned down a whole step. And then you hear him just pummeling that low C, note, which is your low E tuned to C. And it's, kind of accented with the rhythm. Like that. Something like that. And basically you're just doing that back and forth, those partial chords, pummeling that low E. The rhythm changes ever so slightly. You start doing like a double hit sometimes. Like that. And eventually you hear Buzz kind of spell out this D5. You're gonna bend that last note, and kind of bend and release. Really cool song, and I'm a huge fan of sludgy, hard rock and metal riffs, just like that. All right, that's gonna wrap this episode of Chordplay with this look at the Chords of Melvins, and definitely a very interesting band, and I really like Buzz Osborne. I think he's an interesting person, human being, also a very interesting musician, too, because he's definitely an innovator and a pioneer. I mean, nobody sounds like Buzz Osborne on guitar, and no band sounds like Melvins, unless they're copying them. Then obviously you're going to hear some similarity. But definitely pioneers, and I really respect players that kind of reshape music in a different way. Whether it's, progressive rock, it could be metal, it could be jazz, or funk, or blues, or whatever it is. And whatever you call Melvins, which sludge metal, alternative metal, grunge metal, experimental rock, what hardcore punk or whatever you want to call Melvins, I really dig their music because it's different. Like I said, nobody sounds like this unless they're copying them. And definitely, I have a lot of respect for Buzz because I've read some interviews and kind of caught some interviews online. He's definitely an intelligent person, just buzzing out all these crazy and wicked riffs. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Layout Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.